GM, everyone. So today we have Kit with us. GM Jen. Look, guys, I'm really excited for this one. Likes, retweets, let's blow this one up. This is obviously a show with Kit, the Web3 base layer for AI, letting AI developers deploy and monetize their work trustlessly and permissionlessly in Web3. We've got guests today, Jen Dodgson, Chief AI Officer, William Peng, Robotics Professor from NYU, and noted human, Julian. And me, the co-host, who's I guess if I'm not a noted human, a non-noted human. I guess that's the only other introduction that we can do today. Hit us in the comments for any questions. We're going to dive straight in to some alpha, some news, and then we'll keep on cooking. But Jen, mic over to you first. How is it going?
Yeah, well, you were just saying before we came in that apparently people have been saying you sound like an AI. So if one of us is human, it's definitely Julian.
Julian definitely, especially after the noodle eating on show last week. I'm just going to throw that out there, Julian.
It wasn't last week. That was 2 weeks ago. Yeah,
two weeks ago.
My noodle eating is scheduled. That wasn't my noodle eating week. And Jen, you called me a human, so I will remember this insult. Yeah.
so people telling me that my voice is AI is a compliment, is what we're saying, because I didn't know. Take it as a compliment.
I want to be a robot so that we can sleep less and can do more. So that's why I put myself. I'm the hype bot, right? And Jen is the one. Jen just slaughtered a bear, sitting on a bear carcass.
Yeah, bowls only around here. He's been taught a lesson. Yeah, no, I think I'm far too ummy. My speaking is far too hesitant and ummy to be AI. Jack is suspiciously fluent. I think it's not natural.
I'll take that. I'll definitely take that compliment.
Should also introduce our guest, Assistant Professor William Peng from NYU, who is by far the brainiest person I think on this call right now, who teaches robotics and is going to teach us about robotics tonight. So,
wow,
yeah,
thanks. Yeah, thanks, and I hope I can live up to that in the next hour or so. Yeah, so thanks for the warm introduction. I've been really good friends with Jen in sort of random encounters, and she invited me here to sort of talk a little bit about my area of expertise, robotics, and I'd really love to share with that. I guess a brief bio would be, I graduated my PhD from NYU in around September 2022. My research interest is actually in legged robots, and at that time, I had a very traditional mechanical engineering background, right? So not much about learning, machine learning based or artificial intelligence techniques, right? And that is something I've sort of absorbed over the course of the last few years. So in many ways, I think you guys are more AI natives than I am, even though embodied AI is supposed to be the next big frontier in robotics. And so I do look forward to learning from you all.
Thank you for joining. And yeah, this is why I wanted to do this space on robotics, because everyone sees the Boston Dynamics dogs and are like, oh, the AI is going to eat us. And there's barely any AI involved in the process of creating a Boston Dynamics dog at all. It's all very kind of conventional robotics techniques, albeit pushed to a very sort of high level. The AI is starting to creep in now, but the basic framework is, it's surprisingly AI light. And robotics is an interesting place. Where you expect to find AI, there's often no AI. And then when you don't expect to find it, the AI is super good and outpacing everyone. So like in the generalization skills of DeepMind's robot transformer models. So yeah, I'm looking forward to get into that. But before we do that, we have to go through the news in the sector this week. So I'm going to review my favorite AI tweets this week. So first of all, I think we have, if you guys can see that. Are we bringing up a tweet? Oh yeah, I'm sharing. But
here we go.
Okay, here we are. Yeah. So we have another announcement by Sam Altman, which we should be getting used to these by this point. Seems like every few months he's out here teasing Skynet. So in this one, what he's saying, he's got a blog post, and in this blog post, he's talking about how they've pretty much declared OpenAI. They've pretty much declared AGI to have been achieved, and saying that they want to move on to artificial superintelligence, which is, I think it's excellent marketing and fair play. I agree with him that that a level of general intelligence has been achieved, but the problem is that even when we went into this, we didn't really know how we were going to define general intelligence. Is it an AI that knows everything, an AI that is capable of learning everything? Is it an AI that passes a Turing test? Because we kind of hit that milestone a couple of years back. So if so, his announcement is a bit late. So people have been arguing a lot about this in the comments, including me. I've been throwing my 2 cents in. Overall, the reception has been pretty good. People are excited about superintelligence and willing to sort of go along with his concept of it. So this could be a sort of a rebirth for OpenAI, because previously I think people were getting a bit cynical about these announcements. They were thinking, oh yeah, we've heard it before, Sam. Nice try.
What is his assessment, Jen? Sorry, just to cut in, but what is his assessment that people are accepting?
So he's saying basically what OpenAI has is artificial general intelligence, and what they're going to work towards in the coming year is superintelligence. So that would be essentially an AI that is, orders of magnitude more intelligent than a human could be on unseen problems.
But he's saying basically OpenAI GPT is already general intelligence, like basically the product most human beings now have access to. This is the general intelligence that they're referring to.
Yeah. Which is, it's fair enough. It knows more domains at the level of a high level human than any human ever could. Which that's impressive. I'm not gonna crap on that. So we've got some other fun stuff that came out this week. Let me share. So we have this video from Mark Zuckerberg, who is continuing his based arc, apparently. He has announced the end of censorship and the misinformation policies on Facebook, which is quite interesting if you're in AI, because, well, for a couple of reasons. A, does this herald the release of an uncensored llama model, potentially? Because right now, even if you're using Llama, which is an open source model, and it is less guardrailed than GPT, for example, it is still censored, and there's some specific areas where it's actually more censored than a lot of the closed source models. So cybersecurity is one. Trying to get it to write illicit code is not easy. So that is one area where this policy change might affect Facebook's AI. But the other area would be just in the training. Because the reason Facebook Meta could put out this really nice open source model was because they were far ahead of pretty much anyone else in AI. The only place they kind of fell behind was in getting the first transformer models out. Otherwise, they've been ahead of the pack since forever because they just have infinite data and infinite high quality data with tagged images and so on. So will the removal of censorship change the training data set? That's something else interesting that I thought came up.
Yeah, I've seen Elon talk about this, Jen. Again, just a very quick interjection from me, but this was during a Joe Rogan podcast with Elon, and they're talking about censorship in terms of, obviously at the time X was getting a lot of heat for really being the first social media that opened this up. And I think that the thing with censoring social media, and this is his take, I'm trying to make it concise, and also it's verbatim. It's been a while, so maybe go back and watch the actual recording. But to summarize his take from what I can remember, basically along the lines of social media shouldn't be a reflection of what people want to see or accept to see. It should be a reflection of the world as it is. And I think if you extrapolate that and look at AI more broadly, for AI to really evolve and to be able to solve any of these problems globally, or even just to really support in a way that can support human beings for where they're currently at, not where we want them to be at, it needs social media, or it needs that data to also reflect the world as it is, not as what the shiny Facebook version of it is currently. So yeah, I think I'd probably credit Elon a little bit with that initial move, and I do think it will have a big impact on AI and Llama specifically.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out in future. The new based llama is coming, because currently, I mean, I have a artificially uncensored llama model on my setup in the office, and it's not great, to be honest. So if they bring out an official one, that will be quite interesting. So the last thing that I quickly wanted to go over before we get into Julian's segments on DAI is actually a topic that kind of leads into it. Just this interest over time graph of the different AI products that are out there, and the fact that we have significant interest in GPT, and then nothing whatsoever in Claude and Perplexity, which are, if you're in the sector, these are huge, massive companies. I mean, Claude is what's going to pay off the FTX debts. Claude alone is going to is going to wipe the slate clean for SBF, and it just hasn't hit the popular consciousness at all, which I thought was kind of fascinating. But to go more into sort of what is hitting the public consciousness and the fact that this sector is still so early, so there's that much growth left to be had, I will pass over to Julian, who is going to go into another tweet, I think.
Yeah. So I think that's actually an excellent segue, right? Because OpenAI, I think, I mean, we shit on Sama a lot in any space I'm in, okay? But he's run an A game, right? From a business perspective, he's run a total freaking A game in terms of sucking all the oxygen out of the room, all the nutrients out of everyone, okay? So that for the benefit of himself, from a perspective of a company founder, company CEO, fair play, well done, hats off. But I think this obviously is the reasons why I shit on him is because this is bad. This is bad because AI is different, right? And in fact, this thing about artificial general intelligence or artificial super intelligence, it's, I don't know. It, to me, it's like you're redefining the goalpost, right? You're redefining what it means so that you can get to the next stage, right? I mean, you look at the current board of OpenAI, it's looks like a pretty malevolent bunch, actually, to be honest. It's like a Halliburton type bunch, but whatever. Okay, let's not go there. So the thing, I think the last shot was interesting because I think Jen, you can start putting it up now. The key bit in terms, I think, either
Sorry, Johnny, can we get a screen share? Sorry, I thought I was already sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, you're good.
Well, I think the oxygen that's been sucked out of room by OpenAI is attention, right? I mean, search results. What do they really signify? Mindshare, right? Whether you can recall this particular brand, and the search engine trends over time is basically people being lazy and not remembering the URL, so they type it in. So this is a very direct representation of brand recollection, in my opinion. So, and on that note, okay, Web3, this segment we can either call it decentralized AI, but for now we just call it this week in AI agents, okay, because that's the prevailing meta nowadays, these couple of months anyway. And it's really quite interesting, right? So at KIP, we are going to be launching. Okay, I've said this for 2 weeks now, but the first products will start to hit next week, and it's really it's a play on attention. So these are some of the things that are getting attention currently, right? So Ava Hollow, okay, well, it's one of the leaders of the space. I'm doing the lazy work of just referring to Sammy's tweets because he does an excellent, basically daily update on the space. So Ava remains the leader. Can we just go down a little bit? Okay, this point, this society of agents, this agent swarm, multi-agent simulations. Okay, this is a very, very interesting development, in my opinion. This isn't new, of course, right? I mean, as I remember, as early as last year, there was already a university, I can't remember which one, but they were already running essentially sims, right? They were running sim characters and they were already interacting with each other. And
Stanford.
huh? What?
Stanford University. I remember which one it was. Yeah, Stanford.
Yeah, this was early last year, I think, right? Like it was the Q1 last year. It wasn't that recent. But yeah, so it's always been quite fascinating to everyone. It's like having your own ant farm, right? Only more intelligent, and you want to see how these people react. And I know Jen will be extremely, maybe not so much swarms, but really autonomous agents, right? These are autonomous AI. They're doing their own thing, based on a set of rules, and you set them into motion. I think what is interesting about this is the mimetic quality of AI agent coins now allows for this type of experimentation. right? Because in a traditional VC funding format, what you would have to do is, okay, figure out, okay, now I have this. Now what's a business around it? Who are the users? And therefore, what's a product market fit? But the nature of the space now, and I think the very degen energies of the space has given rise to the possibility for experimentation. You can experiment with all of these things now. It just has to have it has to be innovative and it has to be cool, right? If I had to put it very, very bluntly, this space is now enabling the creation or development of a lot of things that are just innovative and cool, because what's innovative and cool gets attention, and what gets attention usually gets the capital. Yeah, let's go down a little bit more. There was just one other point that I wanted to mention. I'm not sure if it's in this tweet, but LLM, this coin, okay, it's not here, but I can talk through it. All right. So last 2 days, Jack, do you know about this? The fat coin, right?
I do.
So that in fact, you can chime in. I don't think I know all the details, but this I think just came up in the last 2 days. So him, a very prominent KOL in the space, and a fart coin, a fart coin whale. Okay, so he I think was responsible for this new meme, and this new meme went up really. That's the logo beside Nvidia. That's the token ticker for LLM. Okay, and there's a big feud. This is nothing to do with tech now. Okay, but the two big personalities in the space are now feuding. Okay, Shaw from AI16Z and him. I mean, his nick is him, for those of you who don't know. But yeah, so they're feuding. I don't know whether Shaw is because maybe Shaw would feel insulted that he made that grotesque parody of his logo, of his sexy AI16Z logo. But it's an entertaining watch, and I think this just goes to show that in this space, there's innovation, there's capital, but it's ultimately driven by personalities, right? And guess what? Everybody loves a good show. So yeah, this week in AI agents, there's been a good show. The market has been quite red, but otherwise, AI agents it hasn't stopped. This whole space is extremely, extremely vibrant.
Yeah, I can add some color to this, Julian. I think, look, I missed out on Fortcoin. I just want to like throw my hat and just tell you that I am one of you. I did not see Fortcoin for what it ended up being, which is basically generational wealth for anyone who got in early enough. But AI agents more broadly, and look, it was just they get culture and meme more than humans do. Like, this is, just the idea of an AI agent being like, okay, what is going to really get into the cultural zeitgeist of human beings? I know Fortcoin. The fact that it did those two things, put them together, mind blown. However, I think the big thing that we are starting to see succeed when it comes to AI agents and when it comes to the crypto space, where there just seems to be a synergy. I don't know if it's because of the startup nature of the space, whether it's due to the fact that AI obviously is going to support crypto and vice versa because they can interact so easily together. Whatever it is, the big key sort of standout moment for AI agents in the crypto space so far has been its ability to not only be memeable, but also really just have a personality, and not necessarily a positive one as well. Like, I was on the show the other day, another project who had succeeded in getting a lot of attention with their AI agent. Basically, its whole job is to go start arguments with other AI agents and be nasty, like, but just literally just really shit on whatever they're doing and see if it can get into an argument. And then if anybody else, human or otherwise, comes back into the comments on X to hit these AI agents, it will be aggressive towards them as well. And people love it. Like, this seems to be the thing now. So I didn't see it coming. I don't know why I didn't see it coming. It hurts me deeply, but I do think look, I was literally like Falcoin, of course, in hindsight, 2020. But yeah, this is definitely a thing. the more immature it is, or the more human it is, or the more negative it is. Like they seem to be the three trifectas of like that is going to really put you ahead of the more robotic AI agents.
It's
that
like
we've
the
seen.
theater. It's a theater of the fun and the absurd, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
there is butthole coin. I'm not even making this up. Okay, those of you who don't know,
There is. I can
Shaw has
attest
made
to
the
this.
observation that all the AI company logos look like buttholes. So somebody made a butthole coin. So could be your ticket. I might not see you next week, Jack. Buy butthole today.
Yeah, if my camera goes off for any moment, it's a technical issue, and it isn't the fact that I'm trying to find the ticker and just plow some money into it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we really need to move from the ridiculous to the sublime at this point. And the fact that you just mentioned agents being robotic, I'm going to take that as an insult because robots are great. Was that the best transition I've ever done? I think it probably was.
It was.
Yeah, robots are awesome, and they incorporate AIs really well in ways you don't expect, and don't do it in ways you would expect. So I'm just going to reshare one last time because this I've got something interesting because we actually did some robot stuff. So if this is coming up now, yeah. So this is from an event that Kip held, Token 2049 last year, and we had a great time, and we had robots, which the dogs are dancing around, and the
And
little guys are walking
they're
around.
our robots because of the stickers that we stuck onto
Yeah,
those. Yeah, they're our robots.
and the robots cost more than I think the DJ and the hostesses combined.
Yeah.
But we had the robots because everyone associates AI with robots, and they're not really like very
Worth
AI.
every
So
penny.
it's the dogs can connect up to GPT and talk to you using GPT, but that is the major application I think there. So yeah, what I really wanted to do is stop sharing for a start, and then bring William in to explain kind of the state of the nation of robotics and AI. Why aren't these dogs more sort of AI based, and what can you actually do with AI in robotics? Where is it useful and helpful?
Yeah, I can give some color on those topics, and I can speak for hours, but I'll try to sort of keep things engaging and as if you are my captive graduate students in my lectures, right? So feel free to interrupt me for any questions or anything. So we don't really know what Boston Dynamics is doing. So there are actually two parts, right? There's actually Boston Dynamics proper, which is like closed source. They put out YouTube videos. That's all you get from them, unless you work for them. And they've recently sort of created, I guess, like I don't know if it's called a subsidiary or an offshoot, but they have the AI Institute, which works out in the open, right? And so, but even though we don't know what the original sort of closed Boston Dynamics is doing, every time they go to like robotics conferences, they sort of like very cheekily say, well, what you see is, is just we're just doing the basics very well. We're just using traditional control techniques. We're not using AI. And we're able to achieve these results, which is both like a sort of motivation and depression if you're working on like traditional control techniques, because okay, I can do that, but I cannot do that in my dissertation. So it's like, what's wrong with me, right? Kind of a bit of self-conscious, right? But I feel like that's a bit of a misleading perspective because it sort of gives the impression that they're kind of, okay, we're going to sort of tie one hand behind our backs and impress you all by avoiding the use of AI. Well, there's actually a lot of good reasons why you wouldn't necessarily want to use AI to achieve this kind of robust motion, right? And I think, well, let's first talk about time. So I work on there's a little biped robot. Well, I mean, like yay tall. I'm sorry, it's like if I were standing up, it would go up to my knee height, right? So let's say knee height, right? And it's called Robotics OP3, and it runs on a control cycle, and the duration of a control cycle is 8 milliseconds. So within these 8 milliseconds, maybe there are, let's say, like 3 milliseconds in which the central CPU of the robot is just sort of pinging all the motors and say, hey, what are the joint angles of each motor? Pinging the IMU, so what's my rough orientation, right? So just getting all the data from all the different motors and sensors on the robot. And then 5 milliseconds of that is devoted to actually computing, basically making the next decision, right? So based on all that data, computing where my joints are, and then computing my next move. And we need to have a very tight cycle, even to follow a very basic trajectory. right? So like walk from A to B, because you can imagine, right? The floor is never exactly where you expect it to be. Your foot is never exactly at the right place it needs to be. And these errors, which I think humans are quite like I've slid down a staircase missing a step, and I've done pretty fine for myself, right? Like we can't handle, like, if you're walking on hardwood and you walk on carpet, right? These slight differences in coefficient of friction, we don't mind that at all, right? Because we're really good at it, right? But if you've sort of seen early robots, this is a very tricky problem, right? And so you do need that. You need to be computing things in a millisecond level, and to do that with AI, that just seems like a very tall order, right? Having a traditional sort of just solve some differential equations and optimal control framework, that seems much easier to do something really fast, right? And I sort of jumped ahead to the next difficulty, which is contact. So when you're walking, you're actually, I mean, you think of your foot making contact with the ground, right? So your heel, your corners of your heel, right? It's actually doing something very complicated. There's a lot of, you kind of have to, you don't exactly know when the contact is initiated, how many contacts there actually end up being, right? Actually, I think an even better example is that if you were to reach for your phone right now in your pocket, you don't really have a sense of what's going on in your pocket, right? Your P's are like tangled with your headphone cables, or tangled with your phone. But somehow when you just stick your hand in, you have no sense of what's in your pocket. There are a lot of these unexpected collisions with like 1,000 different objects, 1,000 different contact points, right? And somehow you're able to sort of stick your hand in there and then just pull out a phone pretty easily, right? That is the standard of what you want to achieve with robotics, right? And so are you going to try to have an approach where you kind of do some AI learning and try to like learn all these kind of contact dynamics? Or is there some kind of basic physics knowledge with basic optimal control techniques where you can sort of just solve this problem really fast and really robustly, right? And I think those two.
And while you're, oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. But I was going to bring this in later.
I welcome. Yeah.
It's a perfect moment to bring this up because I wanted to share something which is one of my favorite papers that came out over the past, I think it's still within the past year, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I'm going to share something else which I think is a great example of this phenomenon. Am I sharing right now? Johnny, can I get a screen share, please? Screen share for the blind. Yeah. Okay. So this is an experiment that was done in Hangzhou, where they created this swarm of flying drones that could chase a human through a forest, and everyone kind of reacted crazily to this. Imagine this dystopian Black Mirror future where robots pursue fugitives and so on. You can see that they're actually, they're chasing this guy here. And what was really interesting about this was that it wasn't AI. It was just a basic control unit doing differential equations. And because obviously if you have a drone that size, you can't strap some GPUs to it and run the AI locally. And that would still be too slow. But even if you broadcast it over the internet, it's too slow as well. So they had to really come up with some really nice just nice maths to do something that you would think you would need AI for without AI, essentially. So that was something that fascinated me. And I guess, William, this is your chance to go into more detail about how exactly this feedback loop creates something that looks, to all intents and purposes, like intelligence, even though it doesn't really meet our definition of intelligence, especially in the swarm context in particular, I think, because you get really interesting effects, intelligence-like effects, once you get to the swarm level.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like control theory, once you know it, there's nothing particularly mysterious about it, but I think to a lay audience, it might be like, oh, what's going on in here, right? But the fact of the matter is that if you understand the behavior of a system, right, you can control it, right? Like, for example, we do this all the time. You go to the hotel, there's an unknown shower, and you sort of figure out, like, okay, I don't want to burn myself or freeze myself. And so what do, right? Like, maybe your strategy, your control policy is that, okay, I'm going to maybe move my shower handle to the most hot direction, let it heat up, sort of have my hand. So what I'm doing is that I have a control input, which is I'm just sort of moving the shower handle back and forth, right? And then I am sort of having a sensor. I'm just sort of feeling the water temperature by my hand, right? And I'm sort of just adjusting both. Like when you're driving, right? Like you do this all the time, right? And so how do you formalize this input-output relationship. Well, presumably, if you're an engineer and you've engineered a shower, you can write some differential equations that describe it. Oftentimes in robotics, our differential equations come from essentially Newton's second law and some other things, right? So basic physics, right? And so you derive some differential equations. There'll be some parameters some numbers that still need to be tweaked around a little bit that are related to how stiff your control is. So maybe you want to be more risky. You're living on the edge, right? You might, like, if you think about the control systems you're using to fly a military plane, which has to be more maneuverable versus the kind of control systems you would be using to fly kind of a civilian airliner, you can imagine that there should be some kind of parameters in your control that dictate like how the qualitative differences in behaviors, right? And so it's all just solving differential equations. We've done this since the Cold War. I mean, we could argue we've done this since calculus, the invention of calculus, right? Like a lot of think about the physics that was required to take us to the moon. If you believe that we were able to go to the moon and all that stuff, so caveats there. But like the kind of physics we were able to go to the moon without AI, right? And I think that's deeply impressive because it tells you something fundamental about the universe, that you're able to get so far. You're able to get to like Boston Dynamics level with just what is conceptually very, very similar. But I'd also like to add a little different twist in that so far we sort of made this discussion to see that like what we call traditional control techniques, or when you go into robotics, you actually have to go into a subset of control theory called optimal control, right? Like there's a difference between optimal control and there's a difference between AI, right? Like one's not learning based, one's like physics based, and one's like more maybe physics plus learning based. And if you just look at the literature, that's simply not true. Like for example, if you often you take a graduate robotics class about locomotion and motion planning, you'll actually find that optimal control is taught in the same course as reinforcement learning. And the reason why it's done is because it's kind of the same math behind the scenes. So I'm going to use a bit of an analogy here. So for those of us who are familiar with machine learning, right, we've all done Excel curve fitting, right? Linear regression, we call it, or multiple regression, or if you're doing fancy stats, right? So you have curve fitting, which is that you formulate an optimization problem, a least squares problem. I want to minimize some kind of error, right? When we do curve fitting, we don't think of it as training on data, right? But that's curve fitting. And what if you just do curve fitting, but somehow that you don't get the data all at once, but the data is kind of fed through kind of iteratively. So you're doing the same kind of work in both parts. The math is all the same, but the interpretation, like the twist on thinking between sort of just fitting a data set versus kind of like, what if, you fit some data now, you go back a little bit and tweak things a little bit, right? And you sort of fit over time. Well, suddenly you get paid more, right? Because you're told that you're a machine learning researcher. Yeah, you're not a statistician, right? And so there actually is a lot of bleeding through between. There's a lot of room for an integrative way to think about how AI is used, in addition to the usual
it's fascinating. This fascinating phenomenon where we started out in kind of mid 20th century with cybernetics, and then that split into a million little disciplines who all hate each other. And the mathsier ones despise the less mathsy ones. So we all refuse to talk to each other at this point.
Yeah, it's a little silly.
except me and William, we like each other, and I'm much less mathsy than him, but he tolerates me.
Yeah.
But yeah, one thing that I did want to get into related to that is the Tesla robot, so Optimus. That got presented by Tesla's AI division. So how AI is it, and how physics is it on a scale of
I'll be honest with you. I don't know, when was the first demo of that, because that's the only time I saw it, and I haven't really followed up since. It was a couple of years back, or not super important, but just.
No, last time they just demoed it a couple of months back. But
I'm talking about the first one, like when they first revealed.
The first one was a couple of years back. I think it was stacking boxes. I think that was the first time I've seen it anyway.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were impressed. I think the people with robotics PhDs were not impressed, because they're like, you're doing something that Boston Dynamics, and not even just Boston Dynamics, but I think academic researchers had done for a while, right? Basically some kind of LQR control ZMP, maybe ZMP-based LQR control. But again, it's like we were great. So I think Christian Hubicki, I think he's a professor at Florida State, had a good thread on this at the time, talking about why it was a little disappointing, because you're using traditional control techniques that sort of have been proved. It was impressive as an engineering project, right? Because they still have to cobble together all these actuators and actually implement a controller. Like when I say implement a controller, it says, "Oh, you're just solving differential equations." Actually, there still is a lot of work in that traditional sphere. So like, let's not poo-poo like the difficulties in that. But we just weren't impressed. Like, this isn't like a paradigm shift, right? And it seemed to me what they wanted to do is that they wanted to make a deadline, to have a good reveal, to have like their own robot, and then they want to sort of like forecast like we could use AI for this, and so they kind of had separate-ish things running. You had the sort of traditional control, and then there were some demos that are specifically to show that where AI could potentially be used, right? So I would not take the original Tesla Optimus as a good example of actual integrative machine learning, AI, and robotics in the same package. I think it was more aspirational. I don't know where it is now. I don't know if they've gone much further since then.
So I have an interesting question related to this, and this is for everyone. I'm throwing this out right now to the whole group. So we hear a lot about the kind of the ethics of the use of AI in war and so on. If you have an AI piloted drone, who is responsible if that bombs an orphanage or something? But as you pointed out, AI is really kind of on a spectrum with the traditional physics-based robotics. So if you have a control theory-driven drone that bombs an orphanage, is that more or less independent? Does more blame attach to the programmer at that point? So yeah, that's the question that I wanted to throw out to everyone, I think.
Is it too spicy to talk about politics? Is it too spicy to talk about politics and current events? Okay.
Give us your politics. Okay. Yeah.
So
I don't think anyone's going to get offended because this is engineering at this point. Once you're in engineering,
just from a strictly engineering perspective, right? I totally get the view. Like, let's say I'm a civilian and someone war crimes me. Like, it doesn't really matter to me that somebody launched a shell versus like it was an FPV drone. Like, my family is gone. Right? It's like whatever, right? But I do think when we talk about ethics, right, responsibility matters, right? Because if, let's say, traditional chain of command, right, somebody launches a strike, there's actually a really tight chain of command. Like, I guess I forget. It's like I'm not a military person. I don't think they use the term chain of command, but there is a process that you go through to approve strike authorization, to approve like what munitions do you use to do a strike, and people have to sign off on that. Is there enough intelligence on the target that we actually like control? Is the person actually there, right? Is the person there? What are the anticipated civilian casualties, right? And there's a whole process that goes there. And if something goes wrong, then presumably there can be a military court. Like there can be some kind of legal system that kind of audits this, and sort of someone is responsible, or multiple layers are responsible. I think what is different if you have, let's say, AI intelligence is that, okay, if you send an AI drone and let's say if the AI drone is just following your command, then obviously you're responsible, right? Like, that's not true. I think the case would be like if the AI drone doesn't respond in the way you think it will and does something, unintentional consequences, how much on the hook is your process? Is this something where you need to shut everything down and just not include AI in, because it just kind of violates a lot of like, because then again, there's like different laws of armed conflict. Like, does this become not a valid means of warfare? Right? Like, for example,
No, go ahead.
We've agreed to not do strategic bombing. I mean, like, we can't just drop a bunch of dumb bombs, unguided munitions on a city. Is it better if I have an AI algorithm that sort of sifts through data and kind of says, hey, we're going to hit a bunch of sites where we anticipate, like, let's say there's like a risk score, right? And so because somebody like misprogrammed the risk score, the AI very precisely bombs a bunch of grocery stores or like people are gathering because it misunderstands the risk, right? So it very precisely hits those locations. Isn't that just as ethically problematic as just using unguided munitions, right?
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating. As far as I remember, you would know better than I would, but control theory was first developed to target artillery, right?
So I think it's like anti-aircraft guns, basically. Like, you just want to aim something to hit people, right? Like this is like a lot of the optimization theory like is motivated by like World War II and stuff, because people are trying to say how much resources should I allocate towards like fuel, food production, and those sorts of things, right? That's where linear programs first came in.
So how many layers of maths do you need between the guy firing the gun and the guy on the other end of it before it's all whitewashed? I guess that is the question.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Jack. How many layers? Let me know.
There aren't any. Like this, I think realistically, there aren't any layers of math that human beings are going to say, "Oh, well, then no one's at fault." You know, this is the thing. And actually, the more complicated it gets, and the more complexity that you add to it, as in every single layer of math, in my opinion, would cause the opposite reaction from people. They would actually react more negatively the more confusing and the more anybody was to say actually it was the algorithm or it was the AI or it was the math that got away from us. I think that would frustrate most humans more than having that sort of optimized layer of control of, you know, whatever we would call it, chain of command or whatever else. I think chain of command has at least somebody at fault. A decision has been made. If people are saying that there was no decision made, I think that would, you know, that's Skynet, isn't it? That's like that's some really scary stuff. So that would be my take. I think the more complicated it gets and the less control somebody says they have over a decision that was made that impacted lives, the more frustrated and probably the more anger that would be injected into that conversation.
Yeah, it's the same you see in medicine and law and so on. People don't like legal AIs because they want to sue someone if something goes wrong. And the same for medical. You know, there needs to be a human to go to jail somewhere in this process.
The best. That's you took my line, because it was a joke that I heard that I shared with Jen before. It's like the best example or the best theory why AI wouldn't, and I've heard that why AI would never completely replace humans, because humans want other humans to go to jail, or someone must go to jail, right? There's like a whole system of a whole society is built upon some form of notion of accountability, right? And but I was thinking about this, right? So because as whether they're chain of command, whether there's a system of accountability in which we kind of feel that, okay, this is a society that we want to live in which people can be accountable, must be held accountable when things go wrong. But reading about this age of abundance theory, I suppose you could call it that, right? How AI would just make everyone not have to do work, sit back, robots stuff food in your mouth, whatever. I'm exaggerating, okay? It's more sophisticated theory than that. But what's the point, right, of that right? What would be the point if we all didn't have to do any work, right? And obviously the sci-fi, I'm going to take the layman approach or the sci-fi fan approach of this, is at which point, okay, if there was AI that were doing all the work for us in this age of abundance in which we never lack for anything, blah blah, again, which I frankly don't subscribe to in one bit, because resources always be scarce and all that. But yeah, there'll be some point in which they figure like, why are we feeding these slobs, right? So yeah, I think the ethical problem is tied to the accountability issue, because ethics means that there's right and there's wrong, and then what happens when somebody does wrong? They must be punished. So yeah, to your earlier question, I don't think there's any layer, so long as humans remain humans, in the sense that we demand or we want to live in a system that we think enforces some system of accountability, then no layer of math is enough. Somebody's got to go to jail, somebody's going down.
Yeah, look at politics. Like, you know,
Conclusion.
attributing black and white to a completely grey thing. You know, I choose this party because I align with it, but this party has a multiple number of different things that it says it aligns with. You align with 100% of those? No? Okay, well, black and white or grey. Jen, I know we're getting really close to end of time here. I don't know, are there any follow-ups for William?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly rush through the last topic because we kind of spent too long on Fartcoin, like many people in this world. But no, I've kind of spent the whole space crapping on the use of AI in robotics, and it's come off that way, and I didn't intend to do it. So I just want to share one last thing, which is another of my absolute favorite papers this year, and it's one that William brought up when I mentioned the space as well, which is um, the DeepMind RT2 model. So this is really fascinating. It's basically a model that just teaches a robot, if someone says pick up the orange, you need to pick up an orange. But what's really interesting about this is when people started, they expected that robotics AI would require huge amounts of really perfect tagged data. And they actually made a version of the model that had all of that. And then it wasn't really doing very well. So they just crammed as much data as they possibly had, unrelated, badly tagged, all messy in. And it did way better. It generalized incredibly well. So I think one of the tests they did was they had a bunch of items on a table and told the robot, pick up the extinct animal. And it correctly picked up the dinosaur, even though no one had sort of explained to it, oh yeah, dinosaurs are these extinct animals, which was really fascinating to see. And this paper doesn't sadly have the video on. I should have got the one with the video. But yeah, I just wanted to get William's take on that, because this is one of the most exciting things for me, the fact that for some reason robotics makes AI generalize.
So this is where I'm gonna sort of speak with more caution, like this. So don't. This is sort of my impression. I think what's really interesting about AI is that you can cut a lot of PhD students, right? Because right now, even with, I've said it's easy to sort of do these traditional control techniques. There still is some manual tuning. It's not like a crazy number of parameters, right? You need to tune your control a little bit for each task, and that's done by grad students. And I think what's really interesting about AI is that you can go from the robot sees an object, like let's say you tell the robot to pick a dinosaur, pick up an extinct animal, right? The robot is entirely autonomous, right? It has a perception stack. It's able to see all the stuff on the screen. It's able to interpret that do some basic cognition that this is the dinosaur toy, and then enact a motion plan to actually like grab it. There is no PhD student involved in this technique. Everything is just one continuous pipeline, which is what you would want if you want robots to be in the workforce, right? To be cooperating with humans, right? This is something that I think just a pure Boston Dynamics approach would never be able to get you to do, because there's always going to have some engineer or some technician that's well versed in the theory to operate these things. And I think it's really cool that this is even doable. Like if you look into details, like the way you can not just tokenize bits of language, but tokenize actions. So we've played around with this idea in traditional robotics, like motion primitives, the idea that you might be able to sort of break down what a motion is into constituent like Lego blocks and stitch them together. The fact that this, I wouldn't say this idea, but this kind of conceptual framework is kind of realized somehow. So just like I can stitch up together words to make an essay, like a college essay, I can stitch together things that correspond to actual interactions with the world and stitch them together and act like a coherent motion plan. To me is super cool. I wish this was an area that I was wishing to like learn more and delve more into, and I think it's super cool to not have to like hire an army of PhD students to do any basic stuff. And
Down with PhD students.
And I just want to maybe there's one insight I want to get. I think the insight we get from GPD and transformers is that just predicting the next word, the next token, is enough to get you very far. That's a really impressive thing, and maybe reveal something about the structure of the universe. And I think there's other insights. For example, like I think in walking, there's a kind of rule of thumb that if you can look 2 steps ahead, you can plan 2 footsteps ahead, you're basically balanced, right? And so the idea that we actually can have nice things in life, right? Things that seem super difficult, problems that seem super difficult and require a lot of advanced planning can be sort of chunked 1 step at a time. I think this is an insight that I think transcends a lot of human endeavors, not just robotics and AI and other things.
100%. I think that is why so many people are so excited about what is happening right now in AI. That I said this on a previous space, that when the chinchilla scaling laws came out, we all thought, well, yeah, there's no reason this shouldn't work, but the universe just isn't that generous. We don't get freebies. Why is it being so nice to us all of a sudden? I think what you just pointed out is the exact same phenomenon, I think. And it's a tragedy that we have to wrap up at this point, because I could go on for sort of 5 hours, Joe Rogan style, right now. We'll do a follow-up. We'll do another one later on, if you're willing to come back, of course, if we didn't scare you off with the fart coins.
Yeah, bring it on. We can have more.
To chime in, and actually there is a point that I learned from. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, William, on our pod. And there's a very, very important point, and that I learned tonight, right, from William, is that a lot of things that we think, if you don't understand it, you would think that, oh, this must be AI because it's the hot new thing. But a lot of it is like just constituent logic, right? That's how I understand it anyway. And actually, in the Web3 AI space now, the AI agents, we've obviously are positive about the space, but there are a lot of stuff that really isn't AI. It really isn't AI. Like there are agents that say they are doing these things, and actually you don't even need to be an expert like William or Jen to know that that's just pure algorithms. You could do that with algorithms, and you could have done that 10 years ago. You don't have to wrap, okay, I want an agent that they can scan these sets of data. In fact, I just saw this tweet, okay, in which some prominent individual was saying that he would love for this AI agent to do all of these things. And you could have done that 10 years ago with code. You just say, oh, I want an AI agent to do this. Sure, you could have an AI agent do this, but you don't need an AI agent to do this. But undoubtedly, that AI agent will probably get made, and a token will be launched, and it will go up like Filecoin. So yeah. But be careful out there, guys. Or be alert anyway. I like the pure labs better than the pretenders. The ones that say, look, it's a fart coin, buy fart coin. Instead of saying that this is an AI agent and it's no AI necessary. It seems like I'm shilling fart coin, but I have no bags, okay? NFA, I have no bags in this at all. I've told
I
you
don't
I
have a
like
single
we
fart
miss
coin.
life-changing money. Yeah.
Yeah, I presume you wouldn't be doing this space
Yeah, you're off.
if you made life-changing money.
Jack and I are like
Sitting
hand
on my
the
would,
fart
William.
yacht.
Yeah, like just for you, William, I would still be here. I think I can speak for Jen and Julian there. It's been fascinating to get to learn a little bit more about all of this, and I'd love to see you again on a show, because it's just the connection between the two. I think it's fascinating stuff. I think it's something a lot of people need to hear and want to hear, and I love that we're providing that education right now. I think Kip, you guys have definitely deserve a pat on the back for that, and William, obviously, for giving us your time today.
Yeah. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, William.
Thank you for coming. And thank you everyone who joined and sat in. I'm seeing comments coming up right now on the side. You need to find a way to interact better with the comments, to be honest. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and I'll see you again next week.
Catch you next week.
Bye.